Taking your calls today is Reno Rennsport co-owner Brian Lauder. And before we get to today's topic, I really want our listeners to understand why Reno Rennsport is our weekly Ask the Expert guest. We advocate every week making sure you demand the most for your money and ask you to only support the highest quality businesses with fair prices and that are truly committed to their customers in the community. Reno Rennsport is the standard of the industry. We believe the absolute finest, not only in Reno where we broadcast, but in our country. Take your Porsche, BMW, or Mini into them and see for yourself. Make sure you tell them you heard about them on the CarBuyer Advisor, and we'd appreciate your emails praising us for connecting you to them at report@thecarbuyeradvisor.com. And Brian, just your being here when the weather's so nice outside really says just how committed you are to consumer education. And thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us on, Mitch.
We talked about today's topic once before, but ran out of time to delve more deeply into the topic. And I'm referring to the pretty colored lights that may come on today's modern cars. If you would, let's talk about the different colors and what they mean.
Yeah, there's yellow lights and red lights, the two big ones. Red lights. If a red light comes on in your dash, it usually means to pull over. Pull over and at least see what it is, what it means. Sometimes it's okay to keep going to the next, to the service station or to get it fixed. You can drive it to the shop. Sometimes you don't want to drive it at all. Like if it's an overheating or if it's brakes or something that's more serious, you really do have to have it towed to a shop.
You mentioned overheating. In the old days, you might throw a little water in or try to just limp it into that shop, but today that's not such a good idea.
Man, anymore. A lot of the new cars, they're aluminum blocks, aluminum heads. If you overheat them, even for a minute, it can ruin the engine. I mean, it truly ruin the engine. And we run into that a lot of times. BMWs are famous for it. If you overheat that car, if it's in the red for more than 30 seconds, you're sometimes looking at a whole new engine.
So, if it's a red light, you pull over, you stop, and you really decide, is this something, worth going forward, or is it something that I just, make that phone call and be safe?
Yeah, it's not like the old pickup truck anymore.
Tragically for both of us, if you hang around in our industry long enough, you get to see someone that if they addressed the issue when the light first came on, the cost would have been insignificant, and yet now it can cost them thousands to fix that problem.
Yeah, like things like oxygen sensors are a classic example. That the oxygen sensor reads the unburnt fuel that's coming into your exhaust, and it adjusts the fuel mixture that's going into the engine to compensate or to make it run correct. If those are malfunctioning, which they do wear out, they have a lifespan and they wear out. If those are malfunctioning, it throws that light, it throws the code, the light comes on the dash, that means that something's wrong there.
Well, in the meantime, the car still may run right because the computer's still trying to make those adjustments, and you may think, well, this isn't that big of a deal. It's just one of those lights. And
exactly, it's a couple $100 replacement of the oxygen sensor, but if it's running too rich, then that fuel goes into the catalytic converter. It destroys the catalytic converter. That can be thousands of dollars.
Well, on today's cars, that can be just thousands of dollars, and then you can't even get your car re-registered until you address it.
No, if there's a light on, if any of the modern cars that are plugged into the emissions testing machine, if that light is on, if a check engine light is on, it's an automatic fail. And so you've got to get it fixed before you can get it smogged, obviously.
Do you find people that these lights come on and because it does, feel like it's still running okay, that they, it's not stalling necessarily? Do you feel that they just, ignore these lights?
Quite often. Sometimes it is just a one-time event. If it's something like a misfire or something that happened, it'll store that in the computer. The computer will turn that light on, and it's telling you to find out what it is.
Our producer in the studio has a girlfriend who she was talking to us about earlier that had a light come on, and let's talk to her about that.
Yes, and I know you can't see this on the radio, but she had a light that looked a little bit like a cross with two lines through it and a base. And that light came on, and we didn't know what it was. And So when you don't know what the light means, you can ignore it, right? I mean, that seemed to be her stance on it. But who do you need? What do we do? Do we just bring the car in when you get a mystery light like that?
When you have a mystery light on, you want to at least find out what it is. I mean, it might not be something that's detrimental to your car. It might be something really bad.
Well, the light she was describing is one of the water temperature lights. And it's
exactly.
not like it just says water temperature, something.
A lot of times there'll be a yellow light that looks like that says that your coolant level is low. And the car isn't overheating yet, but the coolant level is low. So you at least need to put some coolant in it and see if that light turns off.
So especially at dawn or pass or something, if you're going to ignore that light and you're doing 60 up a 15% grade,
it might turn bad later.
It could. And sometimes those just level sensors, people think, oh, I just need to stop sometime when I get gas next and add a little fluid. But it could indicate that you actually have a leak that untreated will continue to allow that to drain out.
It could be brake level, brake fluid level.
Yeah, so you had mentioned, and I think that Michelle had a really good question, that when people see these lights come on, I can imagine that one of the reasons why they just ignore them often is because they think that just to bring it in, to have you plug in, and to determine what the problem is going to be an arm, 3 legs, and some toes involved, and fingernails while they're at it. And when we talked, you mentioned that what you charge to plug your laptop in and diagnose what it takes to fix it is really inexpensive. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we typically we charge $50 to scan a code. Hook the car up, scan it, see what that code is, and tell you what the code is. If we actually end up working on the car, then we don't charge for that. But it's if nothing else, you know what it is. You know if it's something that's bad, if it's something that you can put off. If it's something like an oxygen sensor, you know that, okay, my smog test is coming up in a couple months. I have to get this fixed before it'll smog.
Oh, so you're saying to me, let's say you get in there and it's $100 repair. It's not $50 to diagnose it and $100 to repair it. The total out the door is $100.
No, yeah, it's really. Sometimes they can be really small.
And sometimes these lights come on and you find out what the code is, and you can make that determination that this is something we can do at a later point in time, or that sometimes they can be phantom too.
It can be a one-time event. It can be something like a misfire, or the cam didn't advance fast enough, or something like that. And so it can be something really simple that just happened once, and you clear that code out and it doesn't come back again.
But there's certainly, for $50, no reason to put off having it checked out.
No, because it can, if you ignore it, it can lead to other things and damage things.
And if you're listening in right now, you really pick up the phone and call Reno Rennsport, make the appointment, take it in. They can basically scan this while you wait and find out what it is. And you can know, and if it's minor, you can get it fixed before it's major. And if it's major, before it causes you to be stranded somewhere. I mean, there's a lot of advantages to that knowledge, let alone just sitting in the driver's seat, driving down the highway, seeing this light, always in the pit of your stomach, wondering, what's going to happen. Is it's still there. And there are lights too. Let's talk about those, if you would. That sometimes they come on while you're driving. You shut the car off. You start the car again another time, and they're no longer there. But do I still just ignore those?
What that means is something keeps happening, and it'll sometimes the car kind of resets itself, and it was a one-time event. It's not some catastrophic thing, and so it'll kind of turn the light back off, and then it'll come on again later.
But each time that light comes on, does it? If it's off now, but it did come on, and I still want to find out what it is, can you find out what that code, what that was? That triggered?
Yeah, all that gets stored in the ECU, in the electronic control unit. And so when you plug that into a scanner, you plug it into the laptop, you get those codes out, and then you go through the book, and sometimes it's a number code, sometimes it actually says what it is, and it tells you what that thing was. And it's amazing how much stuff is stored in there nowadays.
Again, just take it in and find out. At $50, I mean, I think that people might be shocked to hear that a quality shop like yours, that it's really that inexpensive. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. Quality doesn't have to cost more. And what you want to do is you want to get the most for your money. And we say that, but what it looks like is dealing with the highest quality shops that have fair pricing strategies as well. And Brian, that's really what Reno Rennsport stands for. And we talk a lot about quality and fair prices, but on a quick note, Your oil changes are a perfect example of that. If you're changing the oil on a Porsche, BMW, or a Mini, what do you charge for the oil change?
Yeah, we virtually give away oil changes. We charge a half-hour labor for an oil change, and that includes the complete check over of your car, writing down any sort of symptoms we see. If nothing else, it's an excuse to get the car up on the lift, look underneath it, make sure the struts aren't leaking, make sure the brake lines are okay, make sure the radiator hoses aren't leaking. You can see a lot from underneath a car that you don't see looking down in the hood. A lot of the cars, you can barely tell where the engine is nowadays.
So a half-hour labor, you said, and your labor rate hourly is how much?
Hourly is $98.
So $49 basically is what you're charging me to change my oil, plus of course the oil
and filter, because a lot of every car uses a different amount of oil. There's different types of oil. There's synthetic oil. There's regular oil.
But one of the things too is that the oil and the filters you're using, and some people think that they can go to these independent parts places and pick up an oil filter that's recommended for their vehicle, but using the proper oil and the original equipment, filters and things like that can really have an impact on that.
You got to be careful, especially things like oil filters and transmission filters. The aftermarket ones sometimes aren't as good.
And if they fail, that could invalidate some of your manufacturer's warranties on your newer BMW Porsches too. So, and you use all the original equipment, filters and the recommended
all the factory stuff,
quality oils, and a labor rate of $98 an hour. Well, it may sound like a large amount per hour compared to what some of our listeners make. In comparison to other shops in Reno, other franchised businesses that service Porsche, BMW, and Mini, it's a fraction of the cost.
It is. Most of the dealers are quite a bit more than that nowadays.
Anywhere from $110 to $130 to $40 an hour. I mean, so
yeah. And what people forget, with a shop where you've got the overhead of the whole shop, and it's
their land and property gets added into that labor rate. You're absolutely right about that. But it's one thing to save a little money, but again, I want to express how significant the quality standard is at Reno Rennsport. I mean, you have, without a doubt, in the Western United States, some of the absolute most capable Porsche, BMW, and Mini technicians that our country has to offer, and you should be very proud of them.
We really do.
And Brian Lauder, co-owner, Reno